وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. So inshallah today I thought we would just remind ourselves of some of the basic ahkam, the legal rulings of the Sharia in relation to fasting. And in anything and everything that we do is that there's an outward dimension and inward dimension. And we always want to make sure that we remain within the hudud of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what it is that He has that made an obligation upon us, tabaraka wa ta'ala. And that the different forms of worship is that that have what are called shurut al-wujub, conditions of obligatoriness. When those are met, it becomes an obligation upon someone to do that particular thing. In this sense, in terms of fasting, is that the conditions of obligatoriness are that obviously that they be Muslim. And secondly, that they reach the age of bulugh. They become legally responsible at the onset of puberty. Now, it is an obligation upon them to fast. And it's good to get our children used to fasting at an earlier stage. Whenever we feel like they're ready, we could do it, say, for instance, when they're a bit younger, half a day or 3/4 of a day. And that get used to them just as we get them used to praying at age 7 and then at age 10. And although scholars differ upon this, as they get closer and closer to coming of age, is that they should be well accustomed to fasting by that time. But when they become legally responsible, and it is that very important that parents are aware of the signs of becoming legally responsible, and that they have very frank and open conversations with their children so that they know is that when such and such a thing happens, is that this is not shameful, no, that this just means that you're moving on to a new stage. And we should have been doing this from before. And that as children develop, especially when they reach the age of discrimination, which could be around the age of like 5, 6, or 7, depending upon the child, is that now that we've accustomed them to doing other things. And then they reach the age of 10, there's certain things now that we get them accustomed to. And then as they get closer to coming of age, that they recognize that once they become of age, we should have already taught them the basics of what they need to know about the deen. So that now the two angels that are recording all of their deeds is that inshallah they will be acting upon knowledge and doing what is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's also a precondition for the obligatoriness of fasting is that someone have intellect and that they have cognition. And this is what is called the manata taklif. Without intellect, that there is no taklif. And that we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has lifted the pen from 3 people, from a child until they become of age, and from someone sleeping until they wake up, and that from that someone who is legally insane until that they regain their cognition and regain their ability to think properly. So intellect is a precondition, and they go into a lot of depth about what happens if you're unconscious the majority of the day or the entire day. There's detailed rulings that we're not in need of going into now. And then finally, is it the ability to fast? So istita'a, having the ability to do so, is obviously a precondition. If someone is unable to fast, either because of some type of sickness, some type of illness, or that it's because of old age, is that then that no longer are they required to fast in the Sharia of our Prophet ﷺ. And then according to one school, in some schools, then all they will do is just to pay that a fidya in place of not being able to fast, a small amount in the Shafi school, that 1 wuld for every day that they are unable to fast, and then that charity is given to the needy. As for the obligations of fasting, it's really very easy. The arkan of wudu, the arkan of salah, there's many more. For fasting, it's just simply 2. There's only 2 obligations. The first is an-niyah, that you make the intention to fast. And in particular, is that you make the intention in the blessed month of Ramadan to fast the fard fast of Ramadan. And many scholars say that it's an obligation to do what's called tabit an-niyah, is that every single night you make the intention for the next day. Some ulama, like the scholars in the Maliki school, say it's sufficient to make an intention from the beginning of the month, and that intention carries you throughout the 29 or 30 days that you'll be fasting of Ramadan. But even for those that follow that school, it's a good reminder to always make the intention. And the meaning of tabit is that the intention has to be, at least in the Shafi school, from sunset until that dawn. it has to be within that period. And it's a good practice that as soon as we pray Salat al-Maghrib, to remind ourselves to make the intention for the next day. And then there are other sunnah aspects of the intention that we can add. So the one that we've been doing here, nawaitu soma ghadan an adai fardi shahri Ramadan fi hadi sana lillahi ta'ala. There's some additional things that we added there. And in particular, that to fast the day of Ramadan, which is obviously, it's an obligation to make the intention that it's an obligatory fast of Ramadan, but to do it ada, a current performance, and to do it in this year, and that for the sake of Allah. These are additional intentions that we can make that are also good, that bring about a greater reward and help us that be conscious of what it is that we are doing. And then the second obligation is just really simple, is just avoiding all of the mufattirat, the various things that break our fast or that would nullify our fast. And that this is really simply that preventing that any substance or anything from reaching our body cavity from an open orifice. That's how the scholars looked at this. Anything reaching our body cavity from an open orifice. And so the obvious things there are food and drink and things of this nature. And then when you start getting into that other aspects of the more detailed ahkam, scholars will have difference of opinion about what actually constitutes an open orifice and so forth and so on. But the basics of this are really very clear. And you do so from dawn all the way until sunset. And that really is essentially the most important to the obligations of the prayer, intention, and remaining from anything that would break your fast. And inshallah, we will look in a few more details about what are some of those things that do break our fast, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, tomorrow or the day after that. And then we'll get into the sunnahs of it as well. May Allah tabarak wa ta'ala bless us to fast in a way that is pleasing to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Give us tawfiq and bless us to that maintain our fast in a way that is pleasing to Him. May Allah tabarak wa ta'ala open up the doors for us to benefit from this month inwardly and outwardly. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillah.